Welcome to the Property Bible. This show was created for current property owners, people looking to purchase property, and for professionals in the industry. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Property Bible. My name is Kimberly Ackerman. I'm a buyer's agent in Sydney for Trelease Associates. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favourite topics, valuing property. It's such a big thing that we need, especially when we're looking at purchasing property. So I have a colleague of mine, Michael Veroli from Veroli Property Group, to help me talk about this topic. Welcome, Mikey.
Thanks, Kim, for having me on the Property Bible.
You're very welcome. I think, we work a lot together.
Yep.
You value a lot of property in Sydney on a very regular basis. This is what you do best. Well, I think today I really want to discuss the different things that you assess when you're valuing property and how maybe buyers that are out there in the market can use those tools to be able to try and value property themselves. It's such a big thing, and I feel like there's so many people out there who struggle to value property. I mean, even as a professional myself, it's taken me quite some time to be able to learn to value property appropriately. So I really want to cover some of those elements that you go through as a professional valuer to make sure we can kind of give people some tips on how to value property themselves.
So to focus on what we both really primarily focus on is the residential market, like units and houses.
Absolutely.
The best methodology is to look at comparable sales. So to see what is sold in the street. And you need to try aim it for like that certain pocket.
Yeah, there's like a range.
Because you could look at properties, for example, all over Bondi Beach, but there's certain different pockets that derive different values due to the proximity to the beach, to the shops, etc. So
it's not just the postcode.
It's not just the postcode. It's within the postcode, like those certain streets that you need to look at. Look at historical data as well. So not just direct comparison. Look at what have the comparables previously sold for, and are they in line with what the property you're looking at has recently sold for, previously sold for. Are they
actual comparable options?
As actual comparable to show the market trends.
So as far as a range is concerned, I know that we've talked about this before. If you have a property in a certain street, you're going to be sort of drawing a circle around that area and looking at comparables within that range.
Within that pocket,
What kind of range would you normally be looking at?
10% if possible.
10%?
Sometimes,
in kilometres?
In kilometres wise, I usually do a 500 metre radius search.
Really? Okay.
But then I will narrow that down and pick the best sales, drive past the sales, look through the floor plan to see how they differ and come up with a thorough analysis of the property.
So the rate per square metre, that's obviously a big one.
Yep, yes.
When would you use a rate per square metre?
Primarily for units. Because the stock, if you compare how much stock of units there are compared to houses, it's a lot more units. So analysis on a rate per square metre of internal living area is one of the methodologies I like to use to justify, qualify and quantify what my figure is. Yeah.
I must admit, I use a lot of all these elements that you use and that you've taught me over the time. And the rate per square metre is a big one because you might have something that is 10 or 15 square metres difference and you think they're very comparable. But then when you do a rate per square metre, you'd be amazed at the difference in value that you come to.
And also a lot of people don't realise with economies of scale, the smaller the area, the higher the rate per square metre. So that throws people off, and that's something else I need to consider as well.
The quality of the build is a big one.
Yes.
You might have an original 70s house versus a brand new duplex. So you're going to have two different types of quality of the build.
Totally, but I prefer those older builds. Between when the Italians, like all the Wogs and the Greeks, they all came out and they built. Then between like the 1960s, between the 1980s, double brick, and they're proud of their build and they're solid builds.
They're good quality, good bones.
Extremely good quality.
Yeah.
And then you see a lot of the stuff in the early 2000s that's already got water damage. So it's
not always brand new equals more expensive.
Well, brand new sometimes will cost you more down the road.
True.
Versus an older building, it's got lower strata cost and lower maintenance and it's safer.
So when you're assessing the quality of the build, I've never actually asked you this before, but when you're assessing the quality of the build, some of those older houses that are built better, would you sometimes put a higher price on those that perhaps something that's brand new that's probably built a little bit cheaply. It doesn't really work like that.
It depends on who my client is and who the buyer is.
Yeah.
Because it will be tailored to them. If that's something they love, then that will be factored into my report.
Yeah, wow.
But it's hard to determine because everyone's got different tastes.
Yeah, and every property is different, obviously.
Exactly.
I guess the next thing is always providing a range. So when I value property for my clients, I mean, you might spend 24 hours to 5 days. I usually spend about 2 to 3 hours when I value a property, and I go through these elements when I'm doing so. But I think providing a range is a really good point. These properties that we're looking at in the market, they're not worth a specific dollar figure.
No,
you know, like 1.505643. Like it's gonna you're gonna have a range, whether it's 50 or 100 grand or whatever, relative to the
value.
Right.
So for me, when it comes to matrimonial settlement and court cases and mortgage, it's a single figure. That's it. But for pre-purchase and pre-sale advice, there's always going to be a range, good day versus a bad day. So it gives the client, a range to negotiate with the agent.
Right.
And for yourself as well, a release gives you guys a range to know where to negotiate.
Yeah. And it also gives us an idea of, you know, this is where the money is. This is good buying between this range. Anything above that, you're slightly getting into the overpaying side of things. Anything below that is technically below good, fair market value at this stage.
My top range is usually don't spend over that figure.
Yeah. You're quite firm on that.
Yeah, don't spend over. I don't think it's worth your while.
Yeah.
Unless it's an emotional buy and you love this property, then I get it.
Yeah.
But
and sometimes people do buy for the emotional side.
Yeah.
And that adds a invisible element of value to the properties, because you're buying it not because of the fair market value, but it adds a whole nother value because you love it so much.
Emotion.
Or it has specific elements that you haven't been able to find. I think the big part of valuing property for me is it provides us with empowerment in the situation. If I have buyers out there, for example, whether they're my clients or prospective clients or just people that I talk to in the market that are looking for property at the moment, having an understanding of how to value property puts you in such a powerful position.
It does.
Because we get these guides from, you know, the campaigns normally, which are at a certain amount. And a lot of people base their offers around these guides.
And they're usually way off.
They're usually way off. And look, some property gets sold below the guide, but 9 times out of 10, property will get sold for maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the guide. Yeah,
they utilize it as a service, a tool to get people in.
I know.
Because people have got a low budget generally, and they say, oh, look, got a price go over $1 million when it goes for 1.5. It's just to get people in.
Absolutely. And look, some of these off markets, the guides are quite on point, I have to admit. I have been to property with certain agents where the guides are quite on point, but I think because this precedence has been set in the market, one agent can't go off and do more accurate guides because we've already set a precedence for having these low guides and actually have the prices go for a lot more. So being able to value property, people that are out there in the market at the moment is going to be a very useful tool because they won't have to rely on guides. They won't have to rely on anybody else but themselves to be able to assess that property and give a rough range of what it's worth and where they should be coming in as far as offers are concerned. Well, I mean, as far as the reasons for hiring a valuer, those unusual circumstances would be one big one, where you have these specific properties or buildings that have no comparables. They're really unusual, special
like
type of property.
Like no living area or no parking. What do you apply to, or figure do you apply to those sort of demerits and merits of the property? And
it makes those common things that you normally assess a little bit misconstrued, so to say.
Yes.
So that would be a huge case. I mean, I know that Trelise has hired you to be able to value unusual property for our clients in the past.
Yes, strata title, 3-story freestanding house.
Yes. When do you have a strata titled freestanding 3-story home in these suburbs?
You can't subdivide to the area that you want.
Yes.
So your company title or your strata title, let's get around the council regulations.
So I don't know if I've come across very many of those in my time. However, that was a particular item that we had value for Trelease for. And it obviously took more than just a buyer's agent valuation. It took a professional valuation to come in and really assess for the clients what it was worth, which is tough for the real estate agents when they're appraising these properties as well, knowing what kind of range to give their vendors.
Yeah, because I'm aware that for that particular property, the vendor actually got a valuation themselves, and then the client also got a valuation.
Yeah. So it's good for everybody to understand.
So it's good for everybody.
Absolutely. Another reason why and where you're really well used is, I guess, challenging bank valuations, which is an interesting one for me.
There's so many occasions where property is purchased at an auction, which is what fair market value is, then the valuation comes in less.
Yeah.
So
it's not a situation you want to be in.
Oh no, it's like you're excited my family home, and then all of a sudden,
boom,
shit, we can't borrow.
Yeah.
Because the bank screwed us. So then what I tell all my clients is, before engaging me and paying a fee for me to question it, because the banks won't release a report, I'll just do one on the property. Question the bank. Question the bank, get them to send out another valuer who is local, not from like Blacktown or Quarry Park or
someone's local to the area that understands the market.
They send them from.
Yeah.
And get someone who understands the market, question the report and see if they'll come out and actually put a proper figure on.
Yeah. So just to sort of clarify that for a lot of buyers out there in the market, when we buy property, especially in sort of like the inner west, eastern suburbs markets, a lot of the offers that are made are often made unconditional with a 66W, no cooling off period, and they're made instantly after all of the due diligence is done on the property.
Yep.
I see that case happen a lot. The 5-day cooling off period is a lot rarer these days. It still happens, but I find that it's mostly unconditional offers made with a signed contract, boom, deal is done.
Subject to evaluation.
Subject to valuation.
Yes.
Now, this is what happens. Unconditional offers are made. The bank valuations are done after an unconditional exchange. 9 times out of 10, it's fine. Most of the valuations that are done in the current market come in on par with the purchase price, which is fine. Yep. Occasionally, you will have the odd occasion where that property does not get valued by the bank on par with what's been paid for it. Now, there's a couple of elements here. Obviously, myself as a buyer's agent, if I'm involved in this process, I will do a valuation on the property. So I will know if we're out or if we're on the money, and that provides reassurance for us from an offer perspective. However, on the odd occasion that the bank valuations fall short, as you said, always go to the bank, back to the bank first and question or push back on the valuation, which is a possibility from my understanding. The second backup thing is to hire someone like yourself to come in and challenge that valuation.
Yeah, the hard thing with the banks is ask them for a copy of the report, they won't give it to you. Why aren't they giving it to you? Obviously.
Do they have a legal obligation to give it to you?
They used to.
Okay.
Not anymore. They changed it.
Right.
You got to think about it. It's an insurance policy. Who's the bank looking after themselves? If you forego on your mortgage, the bank has to pick that up. So their interest is the bank, not the buyer.
Yeah. And they want
something secure and have insurance policy put in place. And by doing that, the more conservative they are, the safer the loan is.
Well, the facts speak for themselves, really.
Exactly.
I mean, the writing's on the wall, as they say.
One, if they're not giving you the report, there's a red flag already.
Yeah.
And then 2, provide them with the report that I've done and question them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's what's happened for the few cases in Bondi Beach and Dover Heights recently. I've done a few valuations for a particular client.
Yeah.
Presented to the bank.
And they've adjusted the price?
They've adjusted the price.
Amazing. See, people don't know that. I know that the average buyer out there, they don't know that you can challenge a bank valuation. Yeah. People just think, shit, the bank's valued my property at this much and I paid this much. Looking. I have to come up with the difference, which is what most people do.
In my industry, I've bought property, I've sold property before. I understand how hard it is that you're putting your life savings into your future. Buying a property, as I say, it's always a rite of passage.
Yeah.
And it's a foundation for your future, and that $100,000, $200,000 that the bank knocks off their valuation can seriously impact you.
Yeah.
Dramatically. How long does it take someone to earn 100K?
I know.
It's yeah.
And most people don't have 100K up their sleeve to bridge the difference between a bank valuation and what they've paid for the property.
And that's why I'm different to bank valuers, because I understand the challenge, the struggle, and the steps to get where you are.
Yeah.
And that's all factored into the report to provide an honest, realistic figure.
Feedback. And this is why I love topics like this, because it's about providing people with information that they wouldn't normally know, and it's finding those loopholes, and it's working out where can you bend the rules slightly, or where can you adjust what's normal versus what's possible to make it work for you.
It's not bending the rules, it's confronting the rules.
It's confronting the rules.
That's what it is.
It really is.
You're not bending anything. It's totally legal. It's totally allowed.
But it's going against the grain.
Question the big authority.
Yeah, question it.
The David and Goliath situation, question it.
And people can absolutely, especially with situations like this, and this is one of the things I definitely wanted to mention today, was that it is possible to challenge, get out there and give it a shot. And there are multiple layers of challenging. First, go back to the bank. Secondly, get an independent valuer such as yourself to question and provide evidence of why they're wrong.
100%.
So, I mean, I think we've pretty much covered everything. Just to really wrap up what we've discussed today, I mean, people that are out there in the market assessing property themselves that need some assistance around the type of things that they should use as tools to value property on their own, definitely look at comparable options.
In the same street and surrounding vicinity.
Yep, in the surrounding vicinity within a range, not just the same postcode, but the same type of property in that range. Look at market growth. Look at what the property or neighbouring property sold a few years ago. Attach the market growth to that and see what price you get at. That's also going to help you give you a good range. Look at the rate per square metre, especially with the units or apartments that we're looking at. Internal. Look at the quality of the build. Give yourself a range. Don't feel as though you need to stick to a certain dollar figure, because that can be quite confusing, I feel, when going through this process. So maybe give yourself a 50 or 100K range, depending on the price of the property. And consider unusual circumstances. Would you say, like properties that have a scarcity factor to them?
Exactly.
So, I mean, if you're looking at all those options, everything's relative. You're going to have situations where you're not quite sure, but applying these types of tools and rules are going to give you an understanding of how to value your own property. So for those that maybe aren't hiring a valuer or don't have a buyer's agent, give it a go yourself, apply those tools, and it will help you in the current market to assess where you can come in with offers and hopefully get the property of your dreams over the line. So thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, Kim, for having me on the Property Bible.
You're very welcome. Really appreciate your time today. And I've learnt things today. I've learned from you all the time. So love having these conversations about valuations. I think it's a big helpful tool, especially in the current market at the moment. So thank you.
No worries.
So thanks for that episode of the Property Bible. Hope you've learnt something today. I know that I have, and hope to see you soon at the next one.